I never meant for anyone to see me. That was the whole point. Keep my head down, move fast, take whatever scraps might still be warm before the night shift dumped bleach on everything. But the moment I lifted the lid of the prepared foods disposal bin inside the Whole on North Dearborn, the world seemed to stop breathing. My fingers were numb from the cold stiff from pushing Liam's stroller across half-frozen sidewalks, and I swear I couldn't feel my own face anymore. Chicago winters don't just bite, they take pieces of you. I reached into the bin anyway, praying the rotisserie chicken tray still had something left, even a few cold potatoes I could mash with water. Liam hadn't eaten since morning. He was 8 months old, and his cries had turned into this weak, hiccuping whimper that scared me more than any security guard ever could. But I wasn't fast enough. A shadow fell over me, followed by a voice that cracked across the aisle like a whip. "Put that down! This bin is not for scavengers." Gina, the head security guard, stood with her arms crossed over her neon jacket, her lips curling as if I were something stuck to her shoe. Shoppers turned instantly. A woman putting salmon into her cart clutched her purse tighter. A teenage boy snickered and pulled out his phone. An older man shook his head with theatrical disappointment. My cheeks burned even though the store was warm. And then someone behind me muttered, "Chicago is getting wild." Another one said louder, "That's disgusting." Someone near the bakery section actually pinched their nose. I kept my hand inside the bin because pulling it out would mean accepting the shame they were painting on me. I forced my voice to stay steady. "It's for my baby," I said. "He hasn't eaten since." "We don't care," an older woman snapped before I could finish. She wore a long wool coat and carried a designer bag, and her face twisted like my existence personally offended her. "You people always want something for free." You people. I didn't know which part stung more. The accusation, the generalization, or the fact that no one challenged her. Gina stepped closer. "I'm calling the manager," she announced, one hand already reaching for her radio. "You can't dig through store property. This is corporate policy." A teenager filmed my humiliation as if it were a prank. "Guys, look at this," he narrated. "Trash diving at Whole." "Bro, this is crazy." My throat tightened. For a second, I couldn't speak. My breath fogged in the cold air drifting from the produce coolers, and I felt myself shrinking. Smaller, until I was barely a person. "Please," I whispered. "I just need something for him." "Then get a job," someone yelled. "Stop expecting handouts." I opened my mouth to explain that I had a job until last week, that childcare cost more than I earned, that I wasn't a thief. But explanations don't matter when people already decided what you are. Gina reached for my arm. "Come with me." That's when a calm, deep voice spoke from behind the organic apples display. "If we throw this away while a child goes hungry," the voice said, "maybe the trash isn't the problem." The entire row went silent. Even the teenager lowered his phone. A man stepped forward, tall, dressed in a black overcoat dusted with snow hands tucked into leather gloves. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. He just looked at Gina the way someone looks at a locked door they have no patience for. His gaze slid to me, and for the first time all day, I felt seen in a way that didn't make me want to disappear. He saw the stroller. He saw my shaking hands. He saw the truth no one wanted to look at. Gina stiffened. "Sir, this is a private store. We have rules. Rules are supposed to protect people," he said quietly. "Not punish the hungry." A few shoppers shifted suddenly, unsure of themselves. Someone coughed. Someone else lowered their eyes. The man looked at me again, and I swear his eyes softened just a fraction. Not with pity, with recognition. "Are you trying to feed your baby?" he asked. I nodded, 'cause words would have broken me. He turned back to Gina. "Let her take it." "I can't." "It's store policy," Gina insisted, but her voice trembled. "Then maybe the policy needs a conscience." He didn't raise his tone. He didn't threaten her. But something about the certainty in his voice made her drop her hand from her radio and step back. I felt the pressure in my chest loosen just enough to breathe again. The man tipped his head toward the bin. "Take what you need," he said. My fingers moved automatically, gathering the nearest container, wrapping it in a napkin I'd shoved into my coat pocket earlier. No one spoke. No one laughed. Every pair of eyes seemed to follow me, but the shame was different now, diluted by the fact that someone this stranger had stood between me and the weight of their judgment. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know why he helped. All I knew was that when I pushed Liam's stroller out into the cold, I could finally breathe. And as the automatic doors closed behind me, I didn't yet realize one thing. I didn't know the man who stopped them from calling me trash would be the one who rewrote my entire life. I should have known there would be consequences. Kindness is never free in places where people fear trouble more than they fear being cruel. The next morning, I went back to Walmart, not because I wanted to, but because Liam needed formula, and the discount aisle sometimes had returns they marked down to almost nothing. I kept my hood up and moved quickly, praying Gina was off shift. She wasn't. She saw me the moment I passed the floral department. Her eyes narrowed with a satisfaction that made my stomach twist. Before I could turn around, she was already speaking into her radio. 2 minutes later, a supervisor appeared, a man in a blue vest with a badge that read, Operations Lead. His lips were pursed like someone tasting something sour. "We need to talk in the office," he said. "Now." I followed him through the employee hallway, the scent of mop water and cardboard thick in the air. My palms were sweating, even though the rest of me was freezing. The small office looked like every corporate backroom in America. Beige walls, a computer, a bulletin board full of rules no one cared about until they wanted to use them against someone. The supervisor closed the door behind us. "Ma'am, what happened yesterday was unacceptable." My voice cracked. "I didn't steal anything. I took food the store was about to throw away." "It does not matter," he said firmly. "Our disposal area is not for public access. You created a safety risk and a public disturbance." "I didn't create anything," I whispered. "They humiliated me." He ignored that. He typed something into the computer and printed a form. My heart dropped when I saw the title. Trespass Notice. 90 days banned from all Walmart locations in Cook County. My picture, already pulled from the security system, printed in black and white beside the text. They did not tape these on walls. They did not shame you in public. This was corporate America. Quiet, efficient, cold. "If you enter any store during this period," he said, "we will have to call law enforcement." My throat tightened. "I have a baby. I need to buy food." "You should have thought of that before attempting to retrieve items from restricted areas." It felt like a punch I was expected to thank him for. "Please," I said. "We have nothing left at home." "Nothing." "You may leave now," he said. His tone was final. When I stepped outside, the cold air sliced across my face like glass. Liam was in the stroller, half awake, half crying, his cheeks red from the wind. I lifted him carefully, tucking him under my coat. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the only bottle we had. The formula was watered down from stretching yesterday's supply, and even then there had not been enough. He sucked weakly, then pushed the bottle away and whimpered. I swallowed hard, my vision blurred. I sat on a bench outside the store and tried to breathe. That was when I heard a notification ping from my phone. I checked it, expecting nothing good. A video had been posted in a local Chicago community group. A screenshot showed Gina pointing at me while the caption read, "Girl steals from Walmart trash." The video had over 4,000 views already. The comments were worse. "Call CPS. She is unfit to be a mother. Take the baby away. Pathetic behavior." Someone even wrote, "People like her are the reason this city is collapsing." My hands started shaking uncontrollably. CPS. The letters themselves were a knife. Every single mother in America knows that fear. The idea that the wrong stranger's complaint could take your child. Liam fussed louder, his small body squirming in discomfort. I pulled him closer and rocked him gently, trying to soothe him, even though my own chest felt like it was caving in. A woman walking past glanced at me, then hurried away as if my despair were contagious. I pressed Liam's forehead against my shoulder, trying to warm him. He was hungry, really hungry. His cries were thinning out into that frightening near silence. Panic prickled under my skin. I reached into the bottom of the stroller, searching for anything, even a cracker. Nothing. My hands dug through pockets as if something might magically appear. Nothing. The humiliation from yesterday was nothing compared to this. Hunger makes you desperate in ways people with full fridges will never understand. I whispered into Liam's hair. I am trying. I am so sorry. Tears ran down my nose and dripped onto his blanket. I wiped them quickly. He did not need to feel how terrified I was. I pushed the stroller toward the parking lot, heading back to the old sedan I slept in. Its engine barely started in the cold and the heat barely worked, but at least it was shelter. By the time I reached the car, Liam was crying harder. I strapped him into his seat and tried rocking him through the straps. My breath fogged the air. My fingers were numb. He kept pushing at his clothes, tiny fists frustrated. I know, I whispered. I know, baby. The numbness spread through my chest until I felt like I wasn't inside my own body anymore. And then something inside me cracked open. I sobbed into my hands, quiet and shaking so I would not scare him more. It felt useless, pointless, like crying into the wind. I did not know what to do next. I did not know how to fix anything. All I knew was that I had never felt smaller or more alone. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't imagine, was that someone had seen me fall apart in that parking lot. Someone who was not supposed to be there. Someone who had already changed everything without me realizing it. Someone who would not let that be the end of my story. I thought the parking lot was empty that night. I thought no one saw me break the way a person only breaks when there is nothing left to hold on to. I did not know a pair of eyes had been watching from across the street from inside a black SUV with the engine running quietly in the dark. For 3 days after the incident, I kept my head down. I rationed the little food I had left watered-down formula again and heated the car with whatever gas I could afford. I avoided Walmart. I avoided the community page. I avoided everything that reminded me I was one misstep away from losing the only thing that mattered. But on the third morning, as frost thickened across the windshield and I sat rubbing Liam's tiny hands to warm them, I heard an unfamiliar sound outside. Footsteps. Slow, steady, deliberate. Not the hurried steps of someone going to work. Not the heavy stomp of one of the men in the trailer park who drank until they forgot their own names. These footsteps were composed, controlled. They stopped right beside my car. I froze breath trapped in my throat, my fingers tightening around Liam. My first thought was CPS. My second was the police. My third was that Gina had escalated things. Slowly, I lifted my gaze to the window. A man stood there tall, wearing a charcoal cashmere coat, the kind you only see in magazines, or in the Loop on Men stepping out of glass towers. His hair was dark, with streaks of silver at the temples combed back neatly. His shoes were polished, untouched by the dirt and ice that coated the ground. He looked completely out of place in a trailer park full of rusted cars and sagging roofs. But his eyes, I recognized those eyes before I recognized the man. They were the eyes that had met mine inside Walmart, the ones that had silenced an entire aisle with a single sentence. He lifted a hand and tapped softly on the window. Not aggressive, not demanding, just a quiet signal of presence. I cracked the door open an inch. "Can I help you?" My voice came out hoarse. He stepped back, giving me space as if he understood I needed it. "I hope so," he said. His tone was calm, low, steady. The kind of voice people listened to without being told to. He set 2 grocery bags on the ground beside him. They were from a higher-end store, the type that sells almond butter for $10 a jar. I stiffened immediately. "I didn't ask for charity." "I know you didn't," he said. His hands stayed in his coat pockets, not moving closer. "This is not charity," I scoffed. "Then what is it, respect?" he answered simply. The word hit me harder than the cold. I stepped out of the car just enough to brace the door. "Why are you here?" He studied my face carefully, not with pity, but with a strange gentleness, as if trying to read the parts of me I tried to hide. "I saw what happened," he said. "Not just inside the store, outside too." My stomach dropped. "You followed me." "No," he said softly. "I stayed because I wasn't sure you should be alone with what happened. And I wasn't wrong." I turned away, cheeks burning even in the freezing air. Shame mixes with anger in confusing ways. "You shouldn't have watched. People should not be left alone in moments like that," he said. but they often are. His voice sounded almost personal, almost painfully familiar with the kind of emptiness that swallows a person whole. I swallowed hard. Why do you care? You don't know me? Maybe I do, he said. More than you think. His eyes drifted to the bags at his feet. May I show you something? I hesitated but nodded. He crouched and opened the first bag. Inside were essentials: formula, diapers, bread, soup. Nothing luxurious, just things you buy when you actually pay attention. He pulled out a small stuffed fox toy still in its packaging. I thought he might like this, he said. I felt the air leave my lungs. Not because it was expensive, but because he had chosen something for Liam, not for me. I can't take this, I murmured. You can, he said. And you should. This isn't pity. He looked straight into my eyes, steady and unflinching. This is what people owe each other when they see suffering and choose not to look away. Something in me cracked again, not from pain this time, but from something unfamiliar. Something like warmth. I don't understand you, I whispered. He stood brushing snow from his gloves. I don't need you to understand me. I only need you to feed your child. I bent down and picked up one of the bags because refusing would have been pride at the expense of Liam. He watched me quietly, respectfully, as if letting me reclaim control of my own life. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He extended it toward me without stepping too close. I took it reluctantly. On the front, written in clean, deliberate handwriting, was a single line. Not everyone who falls is lost. My throat tightened. Before I could respond, he stepped back. I won't stay, he said. I don't want you to feel cornered. Wait, I said, before I realized the word had slipped out. He paused. I don't even know your name. He hesitated, then gave a small nod. My name is Adrian. Just Adrian. No explanation. No details. No expectations. He glanced once more at Liam, who was now awake and blinking curiously through the window. Something softened in Adrian's expression, but only for a moment. Take care of him, he said gently. Take care of yourself, too. Then he turned and walked away, his footsteps fading into the cold morning. I watched him go until he reached his car. He did not look back, but I did, again and again. Because something in the way he moved, something in the way he spoke, something in the way he saw me, made my heart understand a truth my mind was not ready for. Adrian was not done with my story. Not even close. I didn't expect to see anything from him again. Men like Adrian belonged to a world that never intersected with mine. A world of clean collars and warm houses, not trailer parks and cars that rattled every time the engine coughed awake. So when I found the envelope on my windshield 2 nights later, my first reaction was fear, not curiosity. Fear. The thin white rectangle sat under the wiper blade, trembling slightly in the wind. There was no name written on it, no logo, no return address. That somehow made it worse. I scanned the empty lot, half expecting CPS or the police to step out from behind a truck. But no one was there, just silence and the hum of streetlights buzzing like tired bees. I slid the envelope from the glass with shaking fingers, slipped into the driver's seat, and clicked the doors locked out of habit. Liam slept in the back, his breath soft and uneven, his cheeks flushed from cold, even though I had tucked him into 2 blankets. My hands hovered over the envelope. I didn't open it. Not at first. The last 48 hours had taught me enough about how fragile life could be. One wrong move, one misunderstanding, and everything could collapse. But something in my chest nudged me forward. A small, stubborn flicker of intuition I hadn't felt in years. Slowly, I tore the seal. 2 identical cards slid into my lap. Key cards. Hotel key cards. My breath caught. I blinked and looked again. Yes. Hotel key cards in crisp sleeves printed with Lakemont Lakeside Hotel. I had only seen the place in advertisements that ran during sports games. Rooms cost more per night than I earned in 3 weeks. My heart pounded as I flipped over the first card. A number was handwritten in simple ink. 502. I checked the second card. 428. Beneath both, on a small folded note, I found only 5 words. Room 502 is yours. Nothing expected. My stomach twisted. So many thoughts clashed at once that I could barely breathe. Was this a trap? Was it kindness? Was it both? And why? Why me? Why now? I looked at the time on the dashboard. 9 to 13 p.m. Liam stirred in the back seat, his cry building. His little body shook with cold and fever. I touched his forehead, burning. Panic washed over me. Hospitals were cold to people without insurance. I had been turned away enough times to know that. A hotel room with heat and a clean bath felt like the difference between danger and survival. Even so, I hesitated. I wasn't naive. Men offering hotel rooms didn't usually come with good intentions, but Adrian had not behaved like a man who wanted anything from me. If anything he had tried to give space, I didn't know how to ask for. Still, fear ricocheted inside my ribs. I sat frozen for a full minute before whispering, "I'm sorry, Liam. I can't risk being wrong." I started the car and drove toward the exit of the lot. I made it maybe 20 feet before I saw him. Adrian stood at the edge of the sidewalk, half shadowed by the flickering street lamp above him. He wasn't close to my car. He didn't wave me down. He didn't move. He simply looked at me, hands in his coat pockets, posture calm, respectful, as if waiting to see what I chose. Not forcing, not pressuring, just waiting. I rolled my window down an inch. Cold air slapped my face. "Did you leave this?" I called out. "Yes," he answered. "Why?" "Because your son needs a warm place tonight." His voice was steady, but something fragile wove into the edges of it. "And because everyone deserves one night where they're not fighting to survive." "A hotel?" I asked, almost laughing at how absurd it sounded. "I booked 2 rooms," he said. "Yours is yours, mine is mine." "They're on separate floors." I narrowed my eyes. "You expect me to believe there are no strings attached? Not a single one," he replied. "You owe me nothing." Liam coughed behind me. A soft, raspy cough that didn't sound right. I looked at the rearview mirror and saw his tiny chest rising too fast. Panic surged through me sharper this time. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. Adrian's gaze softened, but he didn't step closer. "Because I know what it is to watch someone you love struggle to breathe," he said quietly. The words landed heavy like stones dropped into deep water. I opened the car door. He immediately stepped back, giving me more space than anyone ever had. "Come if you want," he said. "Ignore it if you don't. Either way, I'll leave the keys here." He placed the keycard sleeves on the curb beside him, then turned and walked toward his SUV. He didn't look back. He didn't wait to see if I would come. That was the thing that scared me most, and the thing that let me move. 10 minutes later, I was driving toward the Lakemont, my heart hammering louder than the engine. The lobby glowed like a warm lantern against the frozen night, all marble floors and tall windows and fireplaces that crackled behind glass screens. I held Liam close, his feverish body pressed against mine as I approached the front desk. The concierge greeted me with a smile too polished to be real. "Welcome to Lakemont Lakeside. Room 502. We've been expecting you." My cheeks burned. I felt out of place like dust on silk. But when I entered the room, everything else disappeared. Heat. Real heat. A clean crib already set up. Towels, hot water, safety. I sat on the bed and held Liam tightly until his breathing eased. 20 minutes later, someone knocked gently. I tensed, but when I opened the door, Adrian stood in the hallway, hands tucked behind him, posture respectful. He didn't try to come in. He didn't ask anything. "I just wanted you to know," he said quietly. "You're safe here." "Why does it matter to you?" I asked. His eyes darkened with something heavy, something that looked like memory. "Because someone once helped me on the night I needed it most," he said. "And I have spent every day since trying to honor that." I opened my mouth to ask more, but he stepped back. "If you need anything urgent, call the front desk. They'll reach me if needed. Otherwise, rest. You deserve at least that." He turned and walked to the elevator. Just before the doors closed, he added softly, "My name is Adrian Mercer." Mercer, as in Mercer Industries. I stood frozen long after the elevator descended, because nothing about that night felt like coincidence anymore. I barely slept that night, even though it was the first time in months I had felt real heat on my skin. The blankets were soft, the room dim and quiet, the kind of quiet people pay for because they don't know what it is to dread silence. Liam finally drifted into a deeper sleep after a warm bath and a dose of infant fever reducer from the hotel's emergency kit, but I lay awake with my back pressed against the headboard, my thoughts racing so fast they felt like sparks scraping inside my skull. By morning, exhaustion clung to me like wet cloth. I stepped into the hallway to return a breakfast tray someone had sent up without my asking. When I opened the door, Adrian was there. Not in a suit, not polished or perfect. He wore a dark sweater sleeves, pushed up hair, slightly mussed, as if he had slept too little too. He stood several feet back from my door hands behind his back. Posture relaxed but careful, as if he didn't want to appear threatening. "Good morning," he said simply. I swallowed. "Did you send the food?" "Yes." "You did not eat dinner last night." His tone wasn't scolding. It was observation. Truth said, gently. That somehow made it harder to absorb. I leaned against the wall. "You shouldn't be doing any of this." "You said that last night," he replied. It was unconvincing then, too. Irritation flared in my chest like a spark hitting tinder. "Why are you acting like this is normal?" I whispered harshly. "Like booking hotel rooms for strangers is something people do." He considered my words quietly. "I don't think strangers remain strangers when you witness each other in moments that break you," he said. His calmness irritated me more. It felt like he had answers for questions I hadn't even figured out how to ask. I stepped closer, my voice low but trembling. "I don't need a savior." "Good," he said. "I'm not offering to be one." The simplicity of the statement made my anger twist into something else, something raw and shaky. "Then what do you want from me?" He exhaled, and for the first time since I met him, he looked away. Not evasively, thoughtfully, like he was choosing how vulnerable he was willing to be. When he finally looked back at me, his eyes held something heavy, something that seemed too old for the lines on his face. "You think this is about wanting something," he said? "It isn't. It is about understanding something." I frowned. "Understanding what pain," he said. The word dropped between us like a stone thrown into still water, sending ripples across a surface I had done everything to keep smooth. He continued softly. "Watching you in that parking lot reminded me of something I have spent years trying to forget." I crossed my arms. "You don't know anything about my life. I know grief when I see it," he said. "It recognizes itself." That silenced me. Completely. He took a slow breath, steadying himself. "My wife died 5 years ago. Complications during an emergency birth. We lost the baby, too." The hallway air went still. Suddenly, the expensive coat, the calm tone, the wealth, all the things that made him seem untouchable felt like illusions. People assume money protects you from tragedy, but I saw it then. Grief does not care about bank accounts. His eyes held the hollow shine of someone who had stood at the edge of a world that had collapsed. I whispered, "I'm sorry." "I'm not telling you for sympathy," he said gently. "I am telling you because I need you to understand something else." His voice dropped. "Since they died, people have treated me like porcelain or like a symbol or like a resource. No one has treated me like a human being in a very long time." His words hit me harder than I expected. I struggled to steady my breath. "And you think helping me fixes that?" "No," he said. "Helping you reminded me I am capable of seeing people again. Not clients, not employees. People." I opened my mouth to respond, but something in me stung, sharp and sudden. "So, I'm a mirror," I said quietly. "You get to look at my misery and see your pain reflected and feel good about yourself." He flinched. Actually, flinched. "That isn't what I meant. But that's how it feels," I pressed. "Because you get to leave whenever you want." "I can't leave anything." His jaw tightened with something like hurt. "You think I have not wanted to leave my life?" "You're rich," I snapped. "You can escape any time." His voice, when it came, was soft but laced with steel. Money does not give you freedom when the prison is inside you. The words stopped me cold. Anger melted into confusion, into guilt, into something unnamed that twisted inside me. I sank against the wall, wiping at my eyes. I'm sorry, I said, though part of me still trembled with defensiveness. I don't trust people who have power over me. Good, he said again. You should not, and I'm not asking you to. We stood in silence for a long moment, the hum of the hotel lights buzzing above us. He looked at the door to my room, then back at me. I'm not here to take anything from you. Not choices, not dignity, not safety. If you want me to disappear after today, I will. But before I do, he reached into his coat pocket and took out a small envelope. I want you to have this. My heart kicked hard, warning me again. What is it? A letter, he said. Nothing else, not money, not offers. Just truth. Truth about what? He held the envelope out but did not push it toward me. About why helping you felt like the first honest thing I have done in years. I didn't take it at first. I stared at it like it might burn me. Maybe it already was. Finally, my fingers closed around the paper. It was warm from his hand. Read it when you want, he said. Or don't. He stepped back toward the elevator. But understand this, Mara. I am not trying to save you. His eyes met mine one last time. I am trying to understand how to save myself. And then the elevator doors closed, leaving me in the hallway with a trembling breath, a sleeping baby, and a letter that felt heavier than it should. I carried the envelope around for 2 days without opening it. Not because I was afraid of what it would say, but because I was afraid of what it might ask me to feel. People like me do not have room for new feelings. Survival already takes up all the space. The Lakemont room was mine for 3 nights. Every morning I woke to warmth instead of shivering. Liam slept longer than he had in weeks. I washed his clothes in the sink with hotel soap and hung them over the heater to dry. I made lists of everything I needed to figure out once those 3 nights were up. Housing, a job, childcare that did not cost more than my life. But every time I tried to think too far ahead, something inside me tightened, like my mind knew I was planning a future I was not meant to reach yet. On the 3rd evening, after feeding Liam oatmeal from the hotel minibar and watching him fall asleep with his hand curled around my finger, I finally opened the envelope. The handwriting inside was precise and clean. Not rushed, not emotional. Thoughtful. Mara, if I overstepped, I will carry that mistake alone. But I do not believe I did. You once asked why I cared. The truth is simple. I have spent years donating to charities without knowing where the money goes. I have funded programs without understanding the people they serve. I have helped thousands without feeling anything. But the night I watched you dig through that bin, something inside me broke. Or woke. I am not sure which. You reminded me that people do not need saviors. They need someone who sees them. Someone who witnesses their struggle without turning it into a lesson or a spectacle. I want to learn how to see clearly again. If you allow it, I would like to show you something. Nothing extravagant, nothing dangerous. A chance to understand the work I claim to care about. There are 3 community centers my foundation funds in Chicago and Wisconsin. I will be visiting them this week and wondered if you would come with me. You would not be alone. Staff will accompany us. There is no expectation and no obligation. Just an invitation to step into a day that might remind us both that the world has not entirely given up on goodness. Room 428, if you want to talk. Adrian. The letter was not dramatic. It did not beg. It did not charm. It did not impress. It simply existed in a way that felt terrifyingly earnest. I stared at it a long time, my fingers tracing the edges. A trip. With him. Not alone. Staff present. No strings. But still, a trip. My mind spun. I imagined how it would look to others, a struggling single mother traveling with a wealthy man. People would make assumptions. They always did. And yet another part of me, the part so tired I could barely think straight, whispered quietly, "What if it helps? What if it changes something? What if this is the chance no one else will ever give you?" I pushed that thought away. Hope is dangerous when life has taught you not to expect anything good. I folded the letter and slid it under my pillow as if hiding it would make the decision disappear. The next morning, I took Liam downstairs to the lobby. They had placed a bowl of oranges near the fireplace. I grabbed 2, stuffing them into my bag because survival habits die slower than hunger. When I turned to leave, the woman at the front desk approached me. "Miss Hartley." My heart seized. "Yes, there was a message left for you." She handed me a small card. The handwriting was not Adrian's. It was messy, rushed, written with a blunt pencil. "Take the chance others wish they had honey. Do not let fear make you small." I recognized the writing immediately. The older woman from the trailer park. Her name was Doris. She had a cracked voice and eyes that looked like she had lived through every storm Chicago ever threw at her. She must have seen Adrian arrive that night. She must have noticed the key cards. Maybe she even saw the way I stood frozen in the parking lot, torn between fear and hope. I closed my eyes. My chest tightened. When I went back to the room, I held the note in one hand and Adrian's letter in the other. Liam lay on the bed, chewing on his fox toy, giggling softly, oblivious to the world's heaviness. I whispered aloud, "I do not know how to choose." That afternoon, I paced the length of the room at least 50 times. If I said no, nothing changed. If I said yes, everything might change, or nothing might. That uncertainty was somehow more terrifying than failure. At 6:30 in the evening, there was a gentle knock on my door. My heart raced. I opened it slightly. A young woman in a navy blazer stood outside carrying a clipboard. She smiled softly. "Hello, Miss Hartley. My name is Clara. I work with the Mercer Foundation. Mr. Mercer asked me to give you this." She handed me an itinerary. Not a vague invitation. A schedule clearly marked with addresses, times, and the names of the staff members attending. 1 day only. Strictly supervised. No private travel. No ambiguity. Clara continued. "He said to tell you that if you say no, he will not ask again." Why, I asked quietly. "Because he believes in choice," she replied. "People who have had their choices stolen often need someone to give them one without pressure." The words hit me harder than I expected. After she left, I stood at the window holding Liam against my chest, the evening light turning the edges of the city gold. I whispered to him, "Do you think we deserve a chance?" He pressed his cheek to my collarbone, warm, trusting, unafraid. My throat tightened. Maybe I was not afraid of the world. Maybe I was afraid of being seen succeeding in it. That night, I packed a small bag with diapers formula, a blanket, and the fox toy. Not because I was sure, but because doubt felt heavier than possibility. In the morning, I stood in the lobby with Liam in the stroller and my heart beating too loudly. Adrian waited near the entrance, talking quietly with 2 staff members. When he noticed me, he did not smile. He merely nodded as if to say the choice was mine, and he honored it. I approached slowly. "I will go," I said. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. Not victorious, not relieved. Something quieter, something like gratitude. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the van waiting outside. Then, "Let us see the world as it should be," he said. And for the first time, I felt the faintest stir of something I had not felt in a long time. A beginning. The van pulled out of the hotel driveway just as the morning sun slid above the skyline, turning the high-rises into pillars of gold. Liam slept beside me in his car seat, his tiny breaths soft and steady. My hands rested on my knees, wringing themselves without permission. Adrian sat in the front passenger seat, angled slightly toward the window, speaking quietly with Clara about schedules and logistics. He did not look back at me, not once, and somehow that small courtesy made it easier to breathe. No pressure, no expectation, just a man giving space where most people tried to take it away. The city thinned as we headed north, buildings shrinking into brick houses and narrow streets. I watched everything pass by like I was seeing it for the first time. Maybe because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't running away from something. I was running toward something I did not yet understand. Our first stop was the women's shelter on the west side. The building looked ordinary from the outside, beige bricks and a plain white door. But the moment we stepped in, the air shifted. Warmth, movement, voices, life. A group of volunteers folded clothes at a long table. A staff member prepared breakfast trays. A toddler toddled past with a mismatched pair of socks and a wooden block clutched in her fist. The noise should have been overwhelming, but it wasn't. It felt like breathing after being underwater. A woman approached Adrian immediately. She was in her 40s with tired eyes and strong hands. "You are early," she teased. "That must mean the board meeting went well." Adrian shook her hand with familiarity. "Jean, you know I come here to escape board meetings?" She laughed, a sound full of affection. "Real affection, not the polite business kind." She glanced at me next, then at Liam asleep in my arms. No judgment, no pity, just recognition. I felt my shoulders loosen. Jean led us through the rooms. Women sat at round tables eating oatmeal, talking quietly. Some looked bruised, others exhausted, all of them carrying more than their bodies could bear. And yet there was something unbroken in the air, something like resilience wrapped in gentle hands. One young woman waved shyly at Adrian. "Gain, Mr. Mercer. I got the job you told me about." His face lit up. Not billionaire lit up, human lit up. "I knew you would," he said. She blushed and looked down at her tray. Adrian didn't hover. He didn't act like a savior. He just listened, present, grounded. When he walked away, Jean whispered to me, "He sits with them. No cameras, no donors, just conversation." You wouldn't believe how rare that is. I believed it more than she knew. After the tour, I stepped outside for a moment of air. The cold wind stung my cheeks. I leaned against the brick wall, letting everything wash over me. Adrian followed a minute later. "Not too close." "How are you doing?" he asked. "I don't know." I answered honestly. "I am seeing things I never knew existed." "Most people do not see them," he said. "Not because they are heartless, because the world makes it easy not to look." His gaze drifted toward the building. "Places like this remind me that healing is not a miracle. It is work." One conversation at a time. There was something heavy in his voice, a weight he carried quietly. We returned to the van and headed north toward a youth center in Racine. Liam woke halfway there, fussing until I handed him the fox toy. Adrian turned slightly, watching him in the rearview mirror. Something in his expression tightened, then softened, like memory and ache had collided. The youth center sat beside a playground, its brick walls painted with murals of children holding books and sunflowers. Inside, kids raced through the hallways with the infectious energy of people who still believed the world said yes more often than no. A little boy with bright red hair ran straight to Adrian and hugged his leg. Mr. A, you came back." "Of course I did," Adrian said, ruffling the boy's hair. "You owe me a rematch in checkers." The boy gasped dramatically. "I am ready. I practiced." He pulled Adrian toward a folding table where a checkers board waited. Clara nudged me gently. "He has been coming here for 6 years," she said, "before the foundation even supported them. This place, it means something to him." I watched Adrian play with the boy, losing on purpose but pretending not to. When he laughed, really laughed, something inside me shifted. I had seen men with power, men who made themselves big so the world felt small. Adrian was not like them. He did not fill the room. He made it safer. After lunch, we drove again. Liam slept on my chest in the carrier. My back ached, but the steady rise and fall of his breathing kept me anchored. Our final stop was a veterans retreat buried deep in Wisconsin woods. A large cabin stood at the center, surrounded by pine trees that reached into the gray sky. Men and women in worn jackets stood outside chopping wood, feeding horses, fixing fences. They greeted Adrian like he belonged to them, not above them, with them. One veteran, an older man with a prosthetic leg, clasped Adrian's shoulder and said, "You still owe me a fishing trip." Adrian smiled. "You keep saying that, and one day I will actually show up." "Good." The man grinned. "I was starting to think billionaires lie." Adrian shook his head. "I retired from lying years ago." The man laughed, unaware of the truth buried in those words. Clara took Liam so I could walk freely without the carrier for a moment. The cold bit through my coat, but the air felt cleaner, sharper. Inside the cabin, a fire roared in the hearth. A group played cards nearby. Another group meditated in silence. For the first time since this trip began, I felt something warm spreading through my chest. Not comfort, not belonging. Something older, something forgotten. Hope. Adrian approached and stood beside me, both of us looking out the window at the snow beginning to fall. "What do you see?" he asked quietly. I swallowed. "People trying to heal." "Yes," he said, "and people helping them without needing to be asked." "Why show me this?" I whispered. "Because you deserve to know the world is bigger than the pain you have been dealt." I looked at him, really looked at him. His jaw tense, his eyes soft, his posture carrying a grief I could feel even without understanding. "And you," I asked, "do you believe that for yourself?" He hesitated. A long, quiet pause. "I am trying," he said. And somehow that truth hit me harder than anything else. We stood there in silence as snow drifted across the pines, two broken people watching others stitch their lives back together. And in that fragile stillness, I understood something without needing it explained. This day was not about charity, or guilt, or redemption. It was about seeing and being seen, something neither of us had felt in a long, long time. By the time we reached the cabin Adrian had mentioned earlier, dusk had already begun to settle over the Wisconsin woods. The sky stretched in long strokes of lavender and slate, and the first hints of snow drifted gently in the cold air. The gravel road leading to the cabin wound through rows of towering pines that whispered with every gust of wind. The place felt isolated, protected like it existed outside the world entirely. When the van stopped, Clara unbuckled Liam and handed him to me with a soft smile. "We will be inside the lodge if you need anything," she said. The staff slowly dispersed, giving Adrian and me space without making it obvious. The cabin stood only a short walk away, its wooden frame glowing with a deep, honeyed light spilling through the windows. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, carrying the faint smell of pine and something warm, possibly stew. As soon as we stepped inside, heat wrapped around us like a blanket. A fire burned steadily in the hearth. The cabin was quiet. Not empty quiet. Meaningful quiet. The kind that holds space for whatever truth you are brave enough to let surface. I removed Liam's hat and brushed a kiss over his forehead. His cheeks were rosy from the cold, his small hands curling and uncurling as he adjusted to the warmth. Adrian hung his coat on a wooden peg by the door, then moved to the large kettle near the fireplace. He ladled some hot water into a mug and set it gently on the table near me. For formula, he set his voice low. He did not make it sound like charity. He made it sound like consideration. I nodded, surprised by how steady my voice came out. "Thank you." I mixed the bottle and sat on the couch. Liam drank quietly, little gulps echoing in the cabin's stillness. Adrian paced for a moment, hands in his pockets, then sat in a chair across from me. He didn't speak right away, neither did I. The fire cracked softly, filling the silence with its own language. Eventually, he looked at me, his expression unguarded in a way I had never seen before. "You handled today with strength most people never learn," he said. "What do you mean, you saw pain without letting it crush you? Most people shut down. You stayed open." I swallowed the compliment sitting strangely in my chest. "That is not strength," I murmured. "It is survival." "Sometimes they are the same," he replied. We fell quiet again. Liam's breathing steadied, his eyes drooping. I laid him gently in the portable crib Clara had brought inside earlier, then stood by the fire to warm my hands. The flames danced, casting gold along the walls, illuminating the grain of the wooden floor. Adrian joined me by the hearth. Not close enough to make me step back, just near enough that our shadows touched. He stared into the fire. "You asked me yesterday why I cared," he said. "Yes." I did not answer honestly. I looked at him waiting. His jaw tightened the way it did whenever emotion threatened to rise. 5 years ago, he said slowly, my wife was in a car accident. Our baby did not survive. The words landed gently but heavily, as if he had learned to say them without breaking but had never learned how to stop feeling them. My breath caught. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He nodded once as if acknowledging the grief without letting it consume him. People kept telling me it was time to move on, he continued. But grief is not a place you leave. It is a place you learn to live in. I knew that truth. Different shape, same weight. So I buried myself in work, he said, philanthropy, meetings, anything that made me feel useful without feeling anything at all. And did it help? He smiled faintly, a sad, tired smile. It helped me disappear. Snow pressed lightly against the windows. The fire glowed brighter. I exhaled slowly. I grew up in a house where love was something you had to earn every day, I said, and the moment you failed, it was taken away. When I got pregnant, I thought my parents might soften, but they didn't. They shut the door behind me, literally. He didn't interrupt. He didn't pity. He listened, really listened. I had Liam alone, I said, voice cracking. I worked until the day before he was born. I slept in shelters and cars and anywhere someone wouldn't kick me out. I keep waiting for life to give me a day where I don't have to fight so hard. My chest tightened, not from pain, from speaking pain aloud. It felt foreign. Adrian's voice softened. You are not weak, Mara. I shook my head. I am tired. Tired is not the same as broken. His tone carried something warm and fragile, something I wasn't sure either of us expected. The fire hissed. Snow thickened against the glass. Something in the stillness shifted. He finally turned fully toward me. When I saw you in the store, he said I saw someone who had not given up on dignity even when the world tried to take it from her. I looked up at him, heart pounding in a way I didn't want to analyze. You don't know me, I whispered. Not enough to say that. I know what it looks like, he replied. To collapse silently, to fall apart where no one can see, to still get up and choose your child over your pride. My eyes burned, but I forced myself to stay steady. Why are you telling me this? Because today, he said slowly, you showed me parts of the world I forgot existed. And I think you deserve to know something I rarely say. He paused. The air stretched. You are not alone. The words hit harder than they should have. Maybe because they were the truth I needed most. Maybe because he meant them, really meant them. There was no romance in the moment, no melodrama, no tension begging to break. Just two tired souls standing in a warm cabin while snow fell outside, finding honesty in each other's presence. Liam whimpered softly in his sleep. I turned to check on him and felt Adrian step back, giving me space again. That small gesture said more than any comfort he could have offered. Respect. Boundaries. Understanding. I covered Liam with his blanket and whispered, You're safe. Maybe I needed to hear it as much as he did. When I looked back, Adrian was at the window, hands in his pockets, watching the snowfall gather on the pines. The world is quiet here, he murmured. Quiet enough to hear yourself. I joined him at the window. Our reflections stood side by side in the glass, softened by the firelight behind us. What do you hear? I asked. Adrian inhaled slow and deep. Possibility. The word lingered in the air, warm as the fire, cold as the night, real as the ache in both our hearts. I didn't know what tomorrow held. I didn't know what he expected. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But in that cabin, in that moment, surrounded by snow and silence, and a truth neither of us had planned to speak, I understood one thing clearly. Healing doesn't begin when someone fixes your life. It begins when someone sees it. And for the first time in years, someone saw mine. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the frosted window in thin, golden threads, dusting the wooden floor with a quiet shimmer. Liam stirred first, stretching his arms with a soft whimper before blinking up at me. His cheeks were warm, his hair sticking up in soft tufts from sleep. For a moment, just a moment, the world felt simple, safe. I dressed him, fed him, and packed our things while Adrian stood outside the cabin talking with Clara. When he returned, snow clung to his shoulders like tiny crystal feathers. He brushed them off absently. We should head back soon, he said. A storm is coming in this afternoon. I nodded, slipping Liam into his car seat, but something in Adrian's voice told me he had more to say, something that sat heavy on his chest. During the drive back to Chicago, Liam slept, and Clara reviewed grant applications quietly in the back. Adrian, sitting in the front passenger seat, kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, then looking away, as if weighing something, as if afraid to break whatever fragile peace we had found. When the skyline reappeared on the horizon, a strange tension settled inside me, a kind of pressure I couldn't name. I grew up believing opportunities were traps wrapped in shiny paper, that gifts came with strings, that help came with conditions. But the cabin had softened something inside me, and now I couldn't tell if what I felt was fear or hope. When we reached Chicago, Clara arranged for the van to drop us at the Mercer Foundation building. I had seen the exterior on the news, a sleek glass tower, its logo etched in silver, but I had never imagined myself walking through its doors. The lobby was bright and spacious, lined with tall windows and modern art pieces that probably cost more than every car I'd ever slept in combined. I felt out of place instantly, like an intruder in someone else's world. Adrian must have noticed because he said gently, "You're not here as a guest. You're here as someone I believe in." The words warmed me and terrified me. He led us into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Snowflakes drifted lazily past the glass. On the table sat a folder with my name typed neatly on the front. I tensed immediately. "What is that nothing binding?" he said. He slid the folder toward me but did not open it. "I wanted to talk to you about something before you see any of it." I didn't touch the folder. Talk about what Adrian exhaled, slowly leaning both hands on the chair in front of him. "You have abilities you don't see in yourself," he said. "Resilience, discipline, focus, and a way of understanding people that can't be taught." I shook my head. "No, I am just trying to survive." "And you've done it," he replied. "Against odds most people would crumble under." I felt heat rise in my chest. Compliments made me uncomfortable. They felt dangerous, like promises that could be broken. "I can't take handouts," I said quietly. "I don't want charity." "This is not charity," he answered. "This is opportunity, which you will earn, not receive." He opened the folder. Inside were brochures, program outlines, application forms, schedules. Not for financial aid, not for housing, but for something I wasn't expecting. "Culinary training," I whispered. "You cook," Adrian said. "You bake. You mentioned it when we talked. You said making bread calms your mind." Heat rose behind my eyes. I had told him that in the cabin. Quietly, softly, believing he wasn't listening. But he had listened. "There's a vocational program my foundation funds," he continued. "Real training, real certification, a path to building something permanent, something yours." I swallowed hard. "I am not qualified." "You're qualified because you show up," he said, "because you learn fast, because strength is a skill you've perfected." "I am a single mom," I reminded him. "Classes have childcare," he countered, "and transportation support." Every excuse I reached for, he gently dismantled. Not with pressure, not with desperation, with facts, truths, possibilities. I looked away, my voice tightening. "Why would you do this for me?" He hesitated, not dramatically, thoughtfully. "Because someone once helped me see a future I didn't believe I deserved," he said, "and I failed them by walking away from my own life for too long." His eyes met mine. "I will not make the same mistake twice." My chest constricted. Not from romance, not from anything that simple. From the weight of being seen in a world that only looked through me. I sank into a chair, Liam cooing softly in my lap. Adrian didn't sit. He stood beside the table, giving me space to react however I needed. "You don't have to say yes," he added. "In fact, if you say yes today, I won't accept it. I want you to take time. Think. Choose for yourself. Not for me. Not for gratitude. Not for fear." "Why hold back my answer?" I whispered. "Because people like us," he said softly, "tend to rush toward anything that looks like hope. Then we question whether we deserve it. I want you to answer with clarity, not survival instinct." The words were too honest, too raw, too familiar. I closed the folder and held it against my chest. "What if I fail?" Adrian's voice softened into something almost fragile. "You're not afraid of failing, Mara. You're afraid of being seen succeeding." My breath caught. He wasn't wrong. Failure was familiar. Success was a stranger. "What if I disappoint you?" I asked. "You won't," he said, "because I expect you to become exactly who you already are." Snow thickened outside the windows, drifting in slow spirals. The world looked softer through the glass, softer than I had ever felt inside. I didn't give him an answer. Not then. Not because I didn't want to. Because for the first time in years, the answer felt like mine to give. Adrian walked me out of the building, stopping just before the doors. "Whatever you choose," he said, "your path will matter." I knotted my throat too tight for words. He didn't hug me. He didn't touch me. He simply stepped back and let me walk into the snow with my son in my arms and a decision beating quietly against my ribs. A decision that could change everything. Maybe not because of him. Maybe not because of the foundation. Maybe because for the first time I was beginning to imagine a life where I wasn't only surviving. I was beginning to imagine a life I could build, a life that might finally belong to me. For the first week after leaving the Mercer Foundation building, I didn't let myself open the folder again. Not because I'd forgotten it. I knew exactly where it was at all times. On the counter of the tiny studio I rented by the week, under Liam's spare blanket. Inside my bag when I was afraid someone might take it. Then back on the counter again when I reminded myself no one wanted something that belonged to me. I worked mornings at a small neighborhood bakery on the south side. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even stable. But the owner, Mrs. Porter, had offered me a shift after I asked for leftovers one afternoon. She didn't look at me with pity. Just practicality. "We need someone who can lift 20-pound flour bags." "Can you?" I said yes. I always said yes when survival was involved. The bakery smelled like cinnamon and yeast and warm sugar, a smell that clung to my clothes, my hair, Liam's hat. Sometimes he giggled when I picked him up after work, burying his face in my sweater like the scent itself made him happy. Those were the moments I lived for. The seconds where love drowned out exhaustion. I arranged childcare with a retired neighbor who watched Liam in exchange for gas money and homemade soup. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was mine. Every night after my shift when Liam slept and the city hummed outside our thin walls, I sat at the small kitchen table with the folder in front of me. I opened it for the first time on a Thursday. My hands shook, not from fear, from possibility. Inside were clear steps, deadlines, schedules, requirements. The culinary training program wasn't some dream people threw around to sound kind. It was real, and it was hard. 6 months of training, exams, internships, early mornings, late nights, certificates, a path toward actual employment, a path toward stability, a path I had not dared to imagine. But imagining became dangerous. Once you imagine a better life, the one you're living becomes harder to endure. One night while studying the brochure, I murmured, "I don't know if I can do this, Liam." He slept beside me in the portable crib, tiny fingers curled around the fox toy. As if answering, he let out a soft sigh, peaceful, trusting. Trusting me. Trusting the world I was responsible for. My chest tightened. Maybe this wasn't about me anymore. Maybe it never had been. The next morning at the bakery, I dropped a tray of rising dough while my thoughts spun too fast. Mrs. Porter walked over, wiping her hands on her apron. She eyed me carefully. "Your mind is not here today, is it?" "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Do I need to worry about you quitting?" My head snapped up. "No, I need this job." "Everyone needs something," she said calmly. "The question is what you're trying to decide." Tears stung at the back of my eyes before I could stop them. Her voice softened. "You don't have to tell me what it is, but I'll tell you this." She leaned against the counter. "The worst thing isn't taking a chance and failing. The worst thing is looking back 10 years from now and realizing fear kept you smaller than you were meant to be." I swallowed painfully. "What if I can't do it?" "Then you'll learn," she said. "That's all any of us do." Something inside me cracked gently this time, like an old door opening after years of rust. That night, I filled out the application. I clicked submit before I could talk myself out of it. Then I pressed my hands to my face and let quiet sobs shake through me. Not from sadness, from release, from the terrifying truth that I had chosen something for myself, not for survival, not out of desperation, for myself. The acceptance email arrived 3 days later. I read it on the bus while Liam slept in the stroller beside me. People talked around me. Traffic honked outside. But for a moment, the world fell silent. I was in. I pressed a hand to my chest as if I needed to keep my heart from bursting. Adrian didn't know yet. I hadn't seen him since the day at the tower. I hadn't called. Not because I didn't want to, because I needed to know my decision had nothing to do with him, that it came from a place inside me I had long buried. I started classes the next Monday. The training facility smelled like flour and heat and metal. Real kitchen heat, not home, kitchen heat. I wore an oversized chef's coat that made me look like a child playing dress-up. Liam stayed with the childcare team downstairs, and the first time I left him there, he cried so hard I almost turned back. But the woman in charge, a grandmotherly figure named Teresa, smiled warmly at me. "He will be fine," she promised. "You go. He will be proud one day." Proud. The word felt like a shock to my system. No one had ever said it to me. No one had ever imagined a version of me someone could be proud of. The classes were harder than anything I had done. My hands blistered from kneading. My eyes burned from onion fumes. My back ached from standing. But every night I practiced, quietly, carefully, with a determination that belonged only to people who had run out of failure to fear. I burned things, oversalted things, underbaked things. But by week 2, I could braid brioche without looking down. By week 4, my instructor paused behind me and muttered, "You've done this before." Only in my dreams, I whispered. Liam thrived. He crawled faster, laughed more, gained weight, slept deeper. Each night when I fed him, he touched my cheek like he knew something had changed, like he could feel the new life slowly forming beneath our feet. I never asked Adrian for anything. He didn't interfere. He didn't check in. But once a week, a fresh bag of groceries appeared outside our door. No note, no signature. Just fruit milk bread, baby wipes, and sometimes a little treat, a bag of cinnamon candies or a soft blanket. I didn't need to ask who it was from, and he didn't need to admit it. Weeks passed. I learned, I worked, I grew, I rebuilt. And one cold afternoon after class, standing in the kitchen with the smell of fresh rosemary bread filling the air, something hit me so hard I had to grab the counter. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was becoming. Not because someone saved me, because someone believed I could save myself. And for the first time in my life, I believed it too. The rain that afternoon came down in cold silver sheets, the kind that made Chicago feel older and heavier than it already was. I had just finished stacking the last tray of pastries in the display window when I noticed a commotion outside the bakery across the street. People were slowing down, some staring, some pretending not to. That was always the way it went. Curiosity without compassion. I wiped my hands on my apron and moved closer to the glass, squinting through the fog of the stormy window. A young mother stood there, soaked through hair plastered to her cheeks, clutching a toddler who kept crying into her shoulder. She was begging the man at the bakery door to just let her come inside for 5 minutes so the child could warm up. I saw the man's lips move sharply. I couldn't hear him, but I recognized the posture, the stiff shoulders, the distrust disguised as authority. He shook his head and pointed away from the door, as if she were stray trash being swept from the sidewalk. The woman tried again, wiping at her eyes with the sleeve of her thin jacket. The toddler whimpered louder. A man in a business suit walked by, glancing at her before pulling his coat tighter, stepping around her as if she might reach out and grab him. A teenage boy, recording with his phone, snickered. I felt my heartbeat rise like someone had reached inside my ribcage and twisted because I knew this moment. I knew this humiliation. I had lived this exact kind of rain, this exact cold, this exact fear that the world had already decided I was unworthy. I untied my apron and walked outside before my mind had time to argue. The cold slapped me instantly, soaking my hair, chilling my hands, but I didn't care. The bakery owner called after me confused, but I was already crossing the street. The mother didn't even notice me at first, too focused on trying to soothe the child in her arms while the bakery manager kept saying something I didn't need to hear to understand. I stepped between them gently, but firmly. The manager's mouth snapped shut and I could see the annoyance already rising in his expression. But beneath it was something else. Shame. Because I was not yelling. I was not arguing. I was simply present, and sometimes presence is enough to make someone see the ugliness of their own actions. I turned to him and spoke evenly. She is not the problem. Hunger is. The rain fell harder, soaking all three of us, and for a fleeting second, I felt the exact weight of the moment, the way it looped back to a different storm, a different day, a different me, kneeling at a trash bin while Gina barked insults. The man looked away and muttered something about liability, about rules, about policies, but he no longer had the conviction to stand behind them. I didn't wait for him to finish. I turned to the mother. "Come with me. My bakery is across the street. It is warm. Your child should not be in this rain." She stared at me, disbelief turning slowly into relief, the kind you feel in your bones when you've been carrying fear too long. Her lower lip trembled before she managed to whisper, "Are you sure?" I nodded. I had once asked the world for leftovers, and the world had handed me humiliation. But kindness had found me anyway, not through grand gestures or loud promises, but through one man who refused to let me be treated like trash. Now it was my turn. As we stepped into the crosswalk, I shifted my umbrella over her, and her child letting myself get soaked instead. The toddler reached out toward the light shining from the bakery window, little fingers curling with hope. Inside, the warmth hugged us immediately. I guided them to a booth and asked the barista for a hot chocolate and a warm sandwich. The mother kept shaking her head as if she didn't deserve it. I remembered that feeling, that hesitation that comes after too many slammed doors. "Sit, eat, rest. That is all I ask," I said, and her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. When the hot chocolate arrived, the child grabbed the cup with both hands and giggled a soft sound that made my chest ache in the most familiar way. I sat with them until their shivering stopped. When the mother finally spoke, her voice was uneven. "Why did you help us? No one ever helps us." I took a slow breath, feeling the truth settle inside me like something sacred. Because someone saw me once. Someone saw what the world refused to. And it changed everything. She didn't know what to say. She didn't have to. The moment was already whole. When they finally left dry and warm and carrying a small bag of pastries, I packed quietly. I stepped outside again. The rain had softened to a mist, the kind that blurs the city lights into trembling halos. I stood there, arms crossed, watching the mother and child disappear around the corner. And in that moment, I felt something settle inside me, a sense of alignment, of coming full circle. It was not dramatic. It was not cinematic. It was quiet and steady and deeply human, the kind of healing that doesn't arrive all at once, but grows silently in the space where pain once lived. I realized then that the kindness Adrian gave me had never been meant to stay with me. It was meant to move through me, to reach someone else the way it had reached me. And I whispered into the mist, barely audible even to myself. This is how we heal, one person at a time. The morning of my bakery's opening felt unreal, like stepping into a version of my life I had once believed belonged only to other people. Not girls who begged for leftovers, not mothers who hid in their cars so their babies could sleep a little warmer. Yet here I was in a place built from the scraps of my old life and the stubborn hope of a new one. Light spilled through the windows in soft gold streaks, warming the freshly painted walls that still smelled faintly of vanilla and new beginnings. The sign above the register gleamed with the message I had chosen after months of doubt and endless nights of remembering what it felt like to be invisible. First cup free. Kindness required. Liam was on my hip, dressed in tiny overalls and sneakers that squeaked on the tile every time he kicked his feet. Customers filtered in, some curious, some smiling at the scent of warm bread drifting through the air, some simply looking for a place to sit down for a moment and breathe. My employees, 2 young women from the training program I had completed, moved around with shy excitement. They had stories like mine, stories the world rarely wanted to hear, but I did. And I wanted them to know this place belonged to them too. As I handed a cup of coffee to an older man with trembling hands, something tugged at me, a ripple in the air, like a memory trying to resurface. I glanced toward the window, half expecting to see nothing but the usual blur of traffic and pedestrians rushing past. Instead, I froze. Across the street beneath the awning of a bookstore stood a man in a charcoal coat. His collar was turned up, shielding him from the cold wind sweeping through the block. His hair was a touch longer than I remembered, silver at the temples catching the morning light. Even from across the street, I knew that posture, that quiet steadiness, that presence that had once made a grocery store fall silent. Adrian. He did not wave. He did not call my name. He simply stood there watching the bakery with an expression that was not pride, not longing, but something gentler, something like blessing. My breath caught in my chest, and the room around me seemed to soften, the chatter fading into a distant hum. Liam squirmed and reached toward the window as if sensing the shift. I rested my hand on his back, steadying myself. Part of me wanted to run outside to say all the things I never quite managed to say out loud. Thank you. You changed everything. You saved more than just my hunger that day. But another part of me understood why he stayed where he was. Some people enter our lives to open a door, not to walk through it with us. And Adrian had opened more than a door. He had opened a world, a life, a belief that I could exist beyond the edges of what hardship had carved into me. As I kept watching, he lifted his hand slightly, barely more than a small, almost imperceptible nod. A gesture of farewell, a gesture of faith, a gesture of release. And then, as naturally as the wind shifting direction, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the stream of strangers moving down the sidewalk. No drama, no goodbye speech, no lingering attachment, just a man letting go with grace. I stood there for a long moment, the bakery warm behind me, the winter chill pressing lightly against the glass in front of me. Liam rested his head on my shoulder, his tiny fingers curling at my collar as if anchoring me to the moment. I whispered softly into his hair, more to myself than to him. Someone saw us when no one else did, and because of that, we see the world differently now. Customers continued coming in, unaware of the quiet milestone that had just passed outside the window. A young couple ordered 2 muffins. A tired nurse smiled gratefully as I handed her a free cup of coffee. An elderly woman left a dollar bill in the tip jar that read, "Be kind, always," in shaky handwriting. I watched them all and felt something settle inside me, something steady and warm. I had spent so many years fighting to be seen, to be heard, to be worthy. And now here I was offering those things to others, not because I had been rescued, but because I had finally learned how to stand on my own feet. Adrian had not built this bakery. I had. He had not saved my life. He had reminded me it was worth saving. And that was enough. As afternoon sunlight filtered through the windows, painting soft amber lines across the wooden tables, I felt a shift, subtle but profound. This was my life now. Imperfect, fragile, beautiful. A life full of small beginnings and quiet victories. A life where kindness was not something I begged for, but something I could give freely without fear of running out. I looked around the bakery at the steam curling from coffee cups at Liam, chewing on a toy fox in the corner, at the 2 young women laughing behind the counter. And I realized something simple, something I had never dared to believe when I stood trembling in that grocery store months ago. I was no longer surviving. I was living. And I whispered into the warm air as if sending the words back through every version of me that had ever felt invisible. This is enough. More than enough. If you stayed with me until this moment, then maybe, just maybe, something in this story touched the part of you that still believes in quiet miracles. Not the kind wrapped in money or luck or grand gestures, but the small ones that happen in grocery aisles and rainy sidewalks, and inside the tired hearts of people who are just trying to make it through another day. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Sit with the idea that kindness still matters, not because it changes the whole world, but because it changes one world at a time. Mine changed the day someone looked at me and didn't see a problem to be removed or a burden to be ignored. He saw a human being, a mother, a soul worth noticing. And if you have ever been overlooked, ever been misunderstood, ever carried more than people realized, then maybe you understand why a simple act of compassion can echo through an entire lifetime. The truth is, most of us are not waiting for someone to save us. We are waiting for someone to see us. Really see us. The parts we hide, the parts we lost, the parts we thought would never matter again. And if this story reminded you of a moment when someone showed you mercy, or when you showed it to someone else, then you already know that kindness is the closest thing we have to a shared language. It speaks in ways words never fully can. It reminds us that none of us walk this road alone, even when the world feels unbearably heavy. Maybe you are in a season where you are rebuilding or grieving or searching for something that used to steady your hands. Maybe you are holding on by a thread that no one else can see. Or maybe you are finally finding peace in the small, quiet corners of your life. Wherever you are, I want you to remember this: there is still time. Time to soften. Time to forgive. Time to choose gentler paths, even for yourself. Time to start again, even if starting looks nothing like what you imagined. Stories like mine do not belong to me alone. They belong to anyone who has ever loved, deeply lost, deeply hoped quietly, or kept going even when life felt unfair. They belong to people like you, people who watch and listen not to escape life but to understand it a little more. And if while listening your breath caught, or your heart warmed, or your eyes filled just a bit, that means you still carry something inside you that the world has not managed to harden. Something good, something pure, something worth holding on to. So if you felt anything at all in these last few minutes, I want to invite you to stay with us. Stay for the stories that heal. Stay for the reminders that small kindnesses still matter. Stay because somewhere out there another person is standing at the edge of their own storm, waiting for a moment of recognition, a moment of grace, a moment of being seen. And maybe the next story will be the one that reaches them, or reaches you. You do not have to comment. You do not have to share anything personal. Just be here. Sit with us. Let the next story find you the way this one did. And if you feel it in your heart, if something in you is whispering yes, then go ahead and subscribe. Not for me, not even for this channel, but for yourself. For the part of you that still believes that compassion is a miracle we can choose every single day. Thank you for listening, for feeling, for being here. I hope you stay for the next story. Somewhere out there, another soul is waiting to be seen.